I'm a biologist and watershed educator and work on a range of issues at the watershed scale around human land use and how we bring land use in accordance with how it is that life for the last 3+ billion years has figured out how to connect with that nuke plant up there. It's 93 million miles away, making hydrogen into helium. We're really happy it happens. And then these things called plants that basically figure out how to take that energy and take that sunlight and convert that into sugar and wood and leaves, and eventually what we're going to talk about is carbon in the soil through this amazing process called photosynthesis. And so how do we take dead dirt, if you will, sand, silt, clay, and through this process of adding some water and life that can convert sunlight into sugar, create soil, this living ecosystem of soil, and the ability to actually allow that soil to sequester atmospheric CO2 into carbon, and as a means of reducing the heat forcing effect, if you will, of the thickening CO2 in the atmosphere. I was looking or thinking about a phrase the other day that gets paraphrased a bunch that basically goes something like, humanity, despite our artistic pretensions and sophistication and many accomplishments, owe our existence to a 6-inch layer of topsoil and the fact that it rains. And it's pretty much that basic, and yet when we try to figure out the difference of the fact that it's how do we support getting carbon in the soil, and then we look at California and the terrestrial parts of California, roughly 40% of California's surface area, the land portion of it, is actually what we would call rangeland, grasslands, coastal prairies, interior prairies, mountain meadows, things of that nature. And those systems, prairies and grasslands, are disturbance-dependent ecosystems. They require flooding, they require fire, or they require herbivory, some form of disturbance. And if they don't get it, they go to another type of ecosystem. And so the beauty of it is how, as folks who understand disturbance-dependent ecosystems, can we become regenerative disturbers versus degenerative disturbers and connect with the way life works in these systems. And so I'm really happy to have two folks with us today, you all today. I'm just going to give a quick bio for each of them, and then I'll turn it over to them in order, and they're going to give a short presentation, and then I'll have a few questions for them, and then we'll open it up to you all for Q&A. But first of all, we have John Wick here, and John's on the board of the Marin Carbon Project and Carbon Cycle Institute. I've known John for a bunch of years, and his wife Peggy, and their Nicasio grass farm in West Marin there, and I've had the pleasure of working with John and being a student of John's and John being a student of mine. We've had lots of interaction over the years and learning about traditional ecological knowledge and native plants, and then really this bigger question about landscape level management. And I was looking at John's bio, and I like the fact that he says he manages molecules, microorganisms, and raindrops at the watershed scale. And he uses a borrowed herd of cattle as a management tool to promote native ecosystem function on the land. And one thing I really appreciate about John, you're going to hear more about, is his dedication to systems thinking that's at a fundamental level based in biology, but bringing together a collaborative set of folks with the rigor of science and some academics and some quantification to really make more rigorous and defensible, if you will, for a whole suite of our society, the power and the effectiveness of these practices that are on the cutting edge of several billion-year-old idea, but nonetheless, some of us need to have that reproved to us with some numbers and statistics. And John's been doing amazing work with that. And then also we have Brittany Cole-Bush with us, and I was reading her bio, and the eldest of 6 daughters, born to goodly parents in the southern coastal parts of California. And she self-deemed her proclamation, I guess, definition as a modern-day pastoral maiden, doing good work and in the field of the new agrarian and good food movement. And she's not sheepish about really bringing forward the power of sheep and the woolly future we have ahead of us. And I know we heard from Rebecca Burgess, for those folks who were in the session before, on the fiber shed and just how valuable the fiber of sheep are. But we're going to hear about all the amazing other environmental services and benefits that cows and sheep and other animals that are managed on the range provide for the planet, for us, for community, for healthy, resilient watersheds and urban, rural, connected communities. So we're going to get into Animal House here and talk about critters and grass and sunlight, and I'm going to turn it over to John. So give it up here for Mr. John Wick, people.
So, quick background. I actually was a carpenter for decades and a construction project manager. And I've gone through a pretty significant character arc. And I've actually killed a lot of soil in my career, turning it into dirt with no understanding or awareness that I was doing that. And it was, well, this is auto-cycling. Uh-oh, we're moving fast here. So this is our ranch in Marin, and it's on this landscape that this character arc happened, where now all of a sudden, with my wife Peggy, we're working with a leaky, juicy system, natural systems, rather than hardscapes, which I'm familiar with. And so our earlier efforts at managing this landscape included everything but grazing. We actually were very alarmed about cattle and the destruction they cause on the environment. And it was our decision early on to evict the herd that was there grazing the ranch. And we threw the system into chaos. We had weeds appear that I grew up in this area, and these plants started appearing everywhere. I could not walk across what had been our grass fields. And we were losing whole hills to coyote bush encroachment. And so we tried mowing, hoeing, spraying, everything we could think of, and it just made everything worse. Every single thing I tried made the system go the wrong direction. 2003, we had the good fortune of meeting a PhD rangeland ecologist, Dr. Jeffrey Creek, who suggested a lot of reading and also to back away from the system and look at it at the system's perspective and think about what the single event that we could introduce into the system that might influence it towards our declared management objective. Now that's tough. What's my management objective for a ranch? I had no idea. We just wanted to hang out in this beautiful landscape. So we thought about it and realized that we actually have a passion for ground nesting birds and all birds and native animals on this landscape. And so we decided to create ground nesting bird habitat. And what Dr. Creek suggested was that grass needs to be grazed. And through quite a bit of studying, we ended up being able to borrow a herd of cattle as a management tool to promote native ecosystem function, and used a lot of management. This is running a little faster than I want it to. So when in the year I bring the animals in, how many I bring, how often I move them, how I move them, and the pressure I apply to this moving herd through the landscape was starting to result in quite a beautiful expression of these native ecosystems. And so after a few years, we actually had established a significant population of native perennial plants without planting a seed. And what was interesting to me is I was starting to understand what was happening here. And it was all based on grass. Now grass needs to be grazed. We understand that. But grass is actually much more interesting than I appreciated. It actually occurs on Earth where there's not adequate water to support a forest. It's the default cover type. It actually occurs in rangeland systems where there's also brush and trees. But it turns out to be the largest cover type on Earth. Most of it's grazed, and grazing management's an important occupation. And now that we're dealing with scientists, our thought was perhaps with a little bit of insight, we could start managing for grass growth in a way that was shipping significant amounts of carbon photosynthetically, ending up in a durable form in the soil. And working with researchers, we wanted to know if this was actually important. And when we looked at the California landscape, rangeland systems are a large portion of the state, and 61% of the rangelands in the state are similar to the type that we're managing. They're coastal prairie and our Mediterranean system. The Mediterranean system goes all the way to the Sierra foothills. So working with UC Berkeley biogeochemist, Dr. Wendy Silver, we thought about the potential of increasing soil carbon and the consequences globally. When she looked at it, she realized that grassland systems are huge. They're most of Earth in a lot of ways. So therefore, anything we might achieve in terms of understanding and insight into our management that could ship quantities of carbon from the atmosphere into the soil would be important. So we began a biogeochemical analysis of the system to get an understanding of how the mechanisms worked. And so photosynthesis is very interesting. It is the photochemical process where sunlight takes atmospheric carbon through the absorption in leaves and combines it with soil moisture to create carbohydrates. All of the carbon in carbohydrates comes from the air and nowhere else. I never realized that till this project. So we began a project on our ranch where we did a lot of soil analysis. We dug bulk density pits and became completely familiar with the biogeochemical properties of our ranch. And we designed a set of experiments to test the idea whether we in fact could increase soil carbon in a durable form in a way that would be replicable, scalable, and broadly applicable. And so prior to any research, we conducted thorough soil sampling in each of the research plots. We did a complete biomass mapping with UC Davis, Dr. Val Evner, so we knew what plants, where they were, how many. And with Dr. Silver's lab, we began conducting soil system respiration measurements. We knew CO2, methane, nitrous oxide emissions. And then Dr. Silver's lab was able to conduct soil carbon fractionation. So we knew what types of carbon and how durable and how quickly these carbon atoms would be cycling through the different soil layers based on our research. It worked. The bottom line is we established 3 very important things. You can increase soil carbon, and when you do increase soil carbon, you increase the soil's capacity to have even more carbon come into it. And that when you increase the system carbon, great things happen in terms of a cascade of measurable benefits that solve multiple problems, including climate problems, human nutrition, drought resistance, and things like that. And so as a result of our research, working with the USDA and Colorado State University, we've created a USDA tool now that's online. And this is called the Comet Planner. And this is a way for agriculturalists to look at their entire operation in terms of the greenhouse gas benefit to it. So there are 32 practices that currently come with Farm Bill funding, where farmers and ranchers can actually do these activities, get some funding from the Farm Bill to help them do it, that are known to build soil carbon. So we've created the carbon farm planning process with the Marine Carbon Project. This is the Stemple Creek Ranch. I was up there yesterday in Tamales, and there are a suite of practices now that we're helping the landowner implement on his landscape that are all known to be climate beneficial. And the idea here is that in these is grazing management, which we've personally demonstrated to be one of the most powerful tools to not only increase our soil carbon, but increase the health of the grass, the type of grass managed for vegetation type, and produce really wonderful durable goods like wool and things of that nature. And that's my segue to Brittany. How's that?
Great. How cool is that? That's so awesome. You basically just said there's going to be incentive and kickbacks for producers, farmers, and ranchers to manage their animals on the land to do wonderful things on all of those many benefits. So great work, John. It's awesome. And it's an honor to be sitting up here with both of you guys because you're 2 of my biggest heroes. These guys are really cool. My name is Brittany Cole-Bush, and I'm a self-deemed modern-day shepherdess. I come, again, from Southern California. I'm a beach kid at heart. And I got into sheep and goats and loving the land because I felt like it was a calling, and it found me. I was actually en route to go to school at UC Berkeley and did a pivot and change and went to UC Santa Cruz and started studying sustainable agriculture. And at UC Santa Cruz, I started working at a ranch where the owner of the ranch was doing amazing work using sheep and goats to push back the encroachment of coyote brush to encourage native perennial grasslands on his ranch. I was hired to just come and basically take wonderful photos throughout the year. And just within 2 years of working at the ranch, I saw what an amazing job these sheep and goats were doing at reaching some of our goals to push back this coyote brush. So I said, hey, boss, why don't we take this off the private ranch and take it to the public land? And with that, he kind of, he kind of brushed off the idea, but I said, hey, just wait. And so I very eagerly went to the East Bay Regional Parks District to see what they had going on with their current grazing program, and went after a very big RFP, a request for proposal, and proposed bringing our sheep and goats from Star Creek Ranch to the East Bay Regional Parks District. And we are now grazing over 500 acres of the East Bay Regional Parks District with about 2,400 animals from May all the way through September. And that's how Star Creek Land Stewards was started. Thank you. I'd like to take a lot of credit for that, but it's really the sheep and the goats and the dogs that do the work. The best way to really see how this works is visual Lee. So I'm going to share something sweet with you.
Thank you, meal. Thank you, chickens and cows and coffee beans and pigs. Come on, Beck. Let's go. Lay down. Good gal. I love to be outside with the animals and get to experience the elements. I love the fact that I get to hop in my car in Berkeley and drive to work 25 minutes to a regional park that's right there. It's right there on the urban periphery. That's what I love about my work. It's an incredibly bucolic but also contemporary mesh of a lifestyle. This is probably my ideal spot to be herding sheep and goats. There we go. I put out fires, so to speak. The main goal is to reduce vegetation that's fire hazard, as well as poison oak, blackberry, other invasives. They are a land management tool, and they are a part of our efforts to steward this land. Hey, you. I do everything in my power to create the best possible life for these animals, to have the freedom to be a sheep or a goat to their utmost. They get a new salad bowl every day. They get to go to new fresh ground every day. They're rambunctious. If there's any chance for them to get into trouble, they will. The work is hard, but the work is diverse, and it's extremely rewarding. I've had cuts and scrapes and burns and bruises, building paddocks on a daily basis, building fence line, taking down fence line, moving hundreds of animals in places where it's kind of risky. Every day I feel good about what I do, and every day is different. So let me introduce you to my goat friends. They just said hello. And you can't tell me that's not the coolest thing ever. I would say some of the best friends I have now are the guys that I work with. I'm very appreciative to be able to have learned so much by being beside them. They've taught me patience, and they've taught me how to tend to sick animals. They've taught me how to work with dogs. They've taught me how to pace myself. I believe that the simplicity is what is the most gratifying. When you can be really happy with just the basics. You kind of remember you're human when you're out in nature all the time, because we can't do everything that all the creatures in nature can do. Sometimes I wish I could fly. The sheep and goats together in large numbers can impact the landscape drastically, and I feel the same about people and the community and families that I am a part of. I feel that we can make great change. Oh gosh, wow, that's grandiose, I like it. Oh, you, woo!
seen that a bajillion times, and I still get so excited about when I do the call and they call back. It's just so cool. So we're grazing Berkeley, and we're grazing Oakland only in just a couple months. We'll be up in Redwood Park. Redwood Park is one of the parks that was shown in this little film, and we'll have over 800 head. So I invite all of you to come out to Redwood Park and see these animals in action. It's a really amazing opportunity for city folks to just go out onto the urban edge and see these awesome four-legged creatures do what they do best, which is eat and pee and poop and talk to one another. So I do invite you to come out. So as I mentioned in the film, our goals are fire hazard reduction. So we're reducing a lot of the vegetation during the peak fire season in the late 1980s, there was tremendous fires, and many of you will remember them. And what the East Bay Regional Parks District has been doing, as well as other organizations, public agencies have been doing, is using grazing as a management tool. This is not only cost effective in many cases, but it's also contributing to a lot of ecological benefits, such as transitioning some of the undesirable grasslands from annual grasses. They're not bad, but what we really like are perennial grasses, because they do wonderful things. They grow deep, deep, deep roots into the soil. They activate and enliven and enrich the soil, and they also help to soak in water that comes from the sky, the rain. Mm-hmm. So we're able to retain more water in the soil when we encourage these awesome perennial grasslands. So we're not only providing the service of a lot of lawn mowing or pruning, but we're also contributing to this ecological system that is so very wonderful. So we use both sheep and goats in our operation. Here you can see we are in the Hayward area here, and we're grazing right behind folks' houses. We use both sheep and goats. Goats are browsers, like deer. They like to try things up above them. And sheep are grazers, and they like more so putting their head down and eating grasses and whatnot. We choose the specific breeds that we have in our herds because they're drought tolerant, and they are also, they both like a little bit of both. So our sheep will do some browsing, and our goats will do some grazing. I work with a team of Peruvian workers that come up on special work visas specifically to work with sheep and goats. Right now we have a team of 5 guys, and they're actually all in the same family, so that's really wonderful because they're far away from home. So this team of Peruvian herders, they are on site 24/7 with each herd. We split up our herds into bunches of about 400 to 450 animals. We like to have our paddocks small, our fence lines small, so we're high density, high impact, low duration. There's a key to that. What we're trying to do when we do this high impact, low duration is we're trying to mimic some of the ancient herding animal style of grazing the land. It's very different from set stock grazing, which is basically a few animals and a really broad space. There's a lot of advantages for us to do that high density. One, we're in really tricky places behind people's houses. That's, that requires some, it requires a lot of oversight that if you were out on broad range, you wouldn't be able to, you wouldn't have the same worries. In the, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought thinking about these particular goats. In terms of risk and what we do in the urban periphery behind people's houses, goats are wild. They're really wonderful creatures, but they do get out of fence lines. So again, the Peruvian herders and our team of border collies and guard dogs, they're Anatolian Pyrenees white guard dogs. They will bark, but they won't bite. They're just trying to protect our livestock from predators. Domesticated dogs or mountain lions or coyotes. They're simply there to bark, keep them away, and keep the animals safe. So this is an example of a before and after shot of the work we do. So you can see that on the right side, those animals had some pretty heavy impact on that piece of land. They were only there for a day. And we moved them within that day because, again, the high impact, low duration of time churns up that soil, fertilizes that soil, and then we let it rest. And we do this successionally over a number of acres. And our contracts are either 1 to 2 acres all the way up to a couple hundred acres. You can't tell by this photo, but this is a really steep hillside. If any of you have tried to use a weed whipper or a scythe or even a lawnmower on really steep terrain, you know that you probably shouldn't even try it. The goats and sheep are able to do that. Their hooves are small, and they just basically just kind of punch in that soil, and they're able to work hillsides with no problem. This is also shot in Hayward, and this is what a typical loading up situation looks like. Sometimes we even have to close down roads to be able to herd our sheep and goats instead of having to truck them. We try to do that as much as possible. I think it's a really fun thing for folks to see, hey, oh my gosh, the road's closed for 2 minutes because there's 700 animals walking down. It's pretty exciting. I actually did it just yesterday. Right here, this photo's pretty neat. I don't know if you can recognize this, but this is the Berkeley Marina. And we were working at the Berkeley Marina Meadow last year in a pilot project to see what the sheep and goats would do in addressing some of their invasive species issues that they have, as well as to reduce some of the willows, blackberries, some of the undesirables, because really ultimately what the goal and objective there is to encourage healthy grasslands. These are a couple guard dogs in training. They have it good. They get to live with their pals. They get to eat, and they sleep on the job most of the time. Again, you can see the sailboats behind. That's the Berkeley Marina. And so with that, I just wanted to give you a little outline of the work that we do, and I do encourage you all to come out and see our animals grazing in the East Bay Regional Parks District, as well as many other locations. And if you're interested to know where we are and when we are, I'm more than happy to share that information. We graze all the way from Sacramento all the way to San Jose for about 6 months out of the year. And without further ado, Brock.
Woohoo!
Wow. Well, as you can see, the micro to macro scale diversity between land-based, on the ground, with the animals, just head down, and then the science and rigor and such. And so I want to ask each of them one question, because that sort of looks at the scales on that. And one thing I really appreciate about John's work, and specifically the Marine Carbon Project and Carbon Cycle Institute, is your capacity to step up to the plate of politics and policy and land use change and legislative initiative to really create the conditions conducive in our society to allow this kind of critical work to happen. So I know you've been involved in some exciting new stuff here, and I'd love to hear more. I think everybody would love to hear more about that.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I wasn't prepared for that kind of question. I was going to go technical.
No, I don't want to.
We've had, since 2009, I've been going to Sacramento and participating in all the scoping sessions for the ARB, the development of the protocols.
What's ARB?
Oh, Air Resources Board. When Governor Schwarzenegger signed AB 32, Assembly Bill 32, which was the Climate Solutions Act, into law, he charged with the California Air Resources Board to implement that law. And they've developed several strategies on how that might hit the ground. And we've participated in all those scoping sessions to help inform that, and have gotten the attention of the different state agencies. And we've also been visiting all the different agencies and invited them out to our ranch, the Department of Conservation, the California Department of Food and Agriculture, Air Resources Board, to name a few. So our group is very well known in Sacramento. We're invited in to the conversation because we actually don't have an agenda. We're not selling anything, and we're foundation funded. And so our approach is to go first with solid science that's peer reviewed and published, and then work with policymakers and try and hit the ground with practical application of science. And we're very successful. We're very well funded. We're very well informed. And I'm not sure if that answered your question, but a couple of recent examples. By developing that climate planner tool, which we did at the request of the California Department of Food and Agriculture, they're using that now and are allocating $20 million of CDFA funding towards carbon farming. So a very exciting outcome. That money came directly from AB 32 and is now going to hit the ground in counties throughout California as a real example of practical application of climate solution agriculture.
Yay, right?
So cool.
So the possibility then of being able to have a regenerative rangeland relationship with disturbance on the land that's facilitating the growth of plants through an interaction with animals that's actually increasing the amount of carbon in the soil that's taken from the atmosphere and improving water quality and quantity and recharge and biodiversity and native bird habitat in a climate resilient friendly process. That improves the economic resiliency and viability of our rural communities to provide a product to society in the form of a grass-fed burger or a lamb burger that's really tasty, by the way, and a wool sweater.
Yeah.
All in one big solutions-oriented package? Really, we can do this? Yeah.
Lost the grip there.
For those of you who were here with Rebecca Burgess, this is a North Face hoodie. I was surprised Rebecca didn't feature this, but this is Rebecca's work with the Fiber Shed Project to create durable goods. This is a climate beneficial product that was produced by a major manufacturer, North Face, and this is cotton that was locally, organically grown, and the colors are from plant pigments. So it's more than food. There's fiber as well, possibly fuel, other expressions of agriculture. And I wanted to back up one click. Our approach isn't just rangelands, although we're excited about rangelands. Because of who we work with the USDA, our whole approach is for agriculture, which is row crop as well as arable soils and rangeland soils. So there's a lot of land involved and a lot of opportunity. But all of it can be managed to be restorative, and that's our approach. All forms of agricultural production can be restorative.
Yay.
Yeah.
And then I know I was chatting with you a little bit before, and my email's been a little bit off the hook lately, the last few weeks. I have not yet seen this movie, but Cowspiracy. How many people have caught wind of this? There's a little bit of an email buzz going on. Cowspiracy. And it's an indictment of, as far as I can tell, industrial meat production, typically through the confined animal feedlot operations, the CAFOs. Think of Harris Ranch out on Highway 5, what some of us call Dock Cow or Cow Switch down there. And so there seems to have been a dominant response that cows are bad, animals are bad, meat is bad, and we just have to stop it. And I would love to hear from Brittany first and John as well, just is it just a one-size-fits-all sheep and cow scenario, or do we have a sense that there's another viable direction that doesn't have to look like a CAFO?
There is absolutely another direction, and blanketing statements like all animals are bad is going to be harmful. By understanding all of the positive benefits that animals can have on the land, we can make choices when we decide to consume something, be it a wearable product or a consumable product. By knowing your producers, you'll be able to know if you're contributing to a positive and regenerative system or one that is harmful and hurtful. So my response to the cowspiracy, or all cows are bad and we need to completely abandon eating animals, I think that that's harmful, because I think that animals, livestock is a very important and integral part of both land management and healthy communities. By blanketing all producers contributing to something that is not good is harmful. So I would say it's about management. It's about the ethics and morals and strategies and scale of operations that play into how successful or how important or how good managing these animals can be. I would say the more educated the consumer is on where we're buying our food or our products, the better it's going to be in contributing to these regenerative systems that we've been talking about.
A piece I picked up in your video, which is your sense about how happy your animals are, and they get a new salad bowl every day, and that seems as well to be a discussion here that cows and sheep they like eating things.
They like to eat things.
They don't want to be stuck in.
Yeah. It's all about management in your relationship to both the animals, the people that you work with, and the land that you're grazing. And I feel really strongly about the family feel that I have with the animals and the people that I work with, and everybody needs to be on the same page in terms of ethics and morals. And there are awesome organizations like Animal Welfare Approved that does a checks and balances practice to ensure that the way the animals are being raised and cared for reaches the utmost humane standards. And that's something that we are striving towards in certification. And that's something that you can look for when you are, if you do and when you do consume or purchase animal products.
Thoughts on that, John?
Yeah, lots.
Yeah.
Hang on. A couple of background points. I have been working now with Big Ag in California. I never saw that coming. But these are good people, basically. And I'm in this interesting position where all of a sudden I'm realizing the only way this is going to work is if it's all of us. It's not us and them, but us. And I was at a thing at Berkeley campus the other night where Kat Taylor was talking, and she said, rather than us and them, we really should get to we. And I wrote down in my notes, we as in the French way, get to yes.
Oui.
Oui. But so my thinking is these are unprecedented times, but we also have new information, and when we present this new information, it helps people have a safe entry point to cooperation. And so rather than backing someone into a corner, pointing fingers, saying you're bad, let's get some demonstrations of what good looks like and invite them into that space. And that's the philosophy of what we're doing. So it's non-threatening, and we learned this early on in our ranching system. All of our neighbors are obviously doing it wrong, right? Automatically, and they say that about me too. So the convention that rural communities have developed over time is you never gossip about your neighbor, you offer to help. Even though what they're doing is clearly stupid. It's like, how can I help you be successful? And if everyone has that approach to it, as a community we maintain bonds and it's a nicer place to be. So our approach right now is to work with Big Ag, work with the big dairy system, work with the contained animal feedlot operations, and show them this really cool insight that we've developed scientifically. Rather than thinking of all these pieces, as we've backed into now, where you have dirt, and you have seeds, and you have fertilizers, what we've discovered, at least through compost, is that when you combine and create the optimal conditions for good things to happen, you start life. And when you put living things on top of living things, great things happen. So it's a real positive, forward-moving, everybody's welcome into the conversation approach. So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Well said.
So fun. Well, I think we often will look at sustainability as about our ability to sustain the cycles of life. And so we're talking about carbon cycles and water cycles and ultimately creating conditions conducive for life, because this is a pro-life movement here as we're part of it. Because as far as we can tell on planet water, life is endemic. It's the only known place in the universe. So get on board with the 3.5 billion year arc of evolution and partner with some four-leggeds, because they've got it way figured out. So I'm going to open it up to you all for questions and go forward and we'll start there.
I would be more than happy to do that. If you have any connections, I'd be more than happy to walk and talk. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Yeah, this would be cool. You know, there's some conversations to be had. Requests to the East Bay Regional Parks District would be awesome from parents in the area. They're more than happy to involve community into understanding their management of these public spaces. So I think a parent like you just reaching out to the East Bay Regional Parks District, just saying, hey, there's sheep and goats out there. I want my kids to know what's going on. And I would be more than happy to do some of those. Yeah.
All right, there, and then we'll go there.
Oh, she wanted me to
Oh,
step into
I'm
that
sorry.
space.
Yeah, go.
Oh, yeah.
So the Marin Carbon Project is a volunteer consortium of all the agricultural agencies, organizations, and institutions in Marin. So so I'm a private rancher. I don't host field trips, but all our partners do. So MALT, Marin Agricultural Land Trust, would be my first call. Talk to them, Marin Organic. Our work is now expanded off of our ranch. We're now out onto the larger landscape, and so there are partner ranchers who also would host field trips. But I would contact MALT directly and go that way.
All right, here, there, and there.
Was that a question?
You want to talk about common cow education?
Yeah. So could I answer that? Or? Oh, okay. So our approach, communication is very important. Who you talk to about what, at what time, in what format. So our whole focus has been doing it first to see that it's something to talk about. Then the next lift was to communicate that to the scientific community and expand it out to policy and regulatory agencies. And now that we've got this thing pretty well formed up, now the next lift is to talk to the general population. But we have to organize what it is, what's the entry point and what's the actionable item. And so we are working on developing a curriculum. Rebecca Burgess actually, through a foundation funding with the Carbon Cycle Institute, is the one who's going to be developing that curriculum. She did a pilot program in the San Francisco landscape and has been working with the school districts there, basically looking at how they teach carbon cycles and photosynthesis with the existing curriculum. Our mission was not to create a new curriculum that would end up in a binder on the shelf, but actually visit how existing teachers are communicating the ideas around photosynthesis. Part of that effort 2 years ago actually, May 4th in Marin County, Youth and Arts did a musical for us called Photosynthesis, the Musical. And it was wonderful. And so we're playing with the idea, figuring out the entry point, but soon in a school near you, children will learn about this good work. Sure.
Way over there and there.
Rebecca, when the sheep were in this Berkeley Meadow, Marina Meadow, how many sheep were there? How many days were they there? How did you transport the animals? And did you have to pay Berkeley rent, or were these guys feed you later?
Or did they pay you?
Good questions. Good questions. We were there for 17 days. We had 450 animals, and we grazed on this pilot project. We grazed for 17 days. 17. What time of year? It was this time last year. So it was spring. We were trying to get to certain vegetation before seeding out, basically. So it was a very targeted time frame. Again, we grazed about an acre a day with 450 head. Oh, and transportation, sorry. Transportation, we use livestock trailers. And this particular time, we used a double semi livestock trailer so we could bring the animals all in at once. Otherwise, it would be many trips back and forth in a trailer called a gooseneck trailer, which is a double decker and much smaller, about 26 feet. So this was a pretty large transportation. Yeah. Well, there's regulatory spacing. For the double semi, we did a double semi so we could have adequate space. I don't know technically what the spacing is. You don't want there to be too much space because they would have, there's danger of them actually sliding around. So the trick is to have them dense enough where they have a good bumper between each other, but not too much space because that could actually be way more dangerous than them being packed a little tighter. Ventilation
Yeah,
requirements.
this is all very well regulated, and there are compassionate, responsible ways to transport animals. When we pull the cattle trailer up on my ranch, the cows walk off, and then when we move them, we open the doors, the cows walk on. So they've gotten very used to associating this transport phase with good food ahead, and they're very
They know the incentivization.
This is a good thing.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your concern. There are pine shavings which you can put down on the floor, which I highly recommend. It's a nice aromatic thing that does something to their psychology. Yeah. And so yeah, it could be stressful, but it doesn't have to be, and it just depends on how you approach it compassionately. Yeah,
Right,
thanks
so
for your concern, though.
This
That's important.
gentleman, you're in the red, the yellow, and then back there.
Very conservation-minded ranchers that come here to say, or for all this stuff, that they say that you really can't get the perennials back. And I was struck in both your presentations by a suggestion that you can get the perennials back.
It's a problem.
Through these methods. Could you discuss?
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
Yeah, please. I know where you're going
So
with this one.
it worked. Right now, I've got at least 20% coverage of perennials on the system without having planted a seed. We did not graze this year because of the seed production that we're seeing now. And what was exciting to me is that clearly something cool was happening here, and I invited in a California Native Plant Society photographer, Lech Nalmovich, who's from this side of the bay. He got very excited about what he saw. And then we put an open invitation out to the larger native plant community. And I was enjoying watching the email buzz before the event because they were very dismissive. The tone was, well, sure, yeah, we've seen this on serpentine soils all the time. It's no big deal. I don't have serpentine soils. And so when the group got there, I didn't actually take them by the hand. I just drove them up to the top of the hill, opened the doors, and they didn't get 5 feet outside of the vehicle before they all just stopped and started marveling at what was happening. The important thing here is that the whole community, it wasn't just a single species. And the diversity of plants that are now expressing themselves cooperatively, and then the associated butterfly. There was a butterfly that came flying through, and the guy was going, that's a so-and-so, that means there's coreopsis here. And it's just like, it was a very exciting thing. It absolutely works. And what I now bring to this perspective is California had a much longer history of healthy soils. This soil degradation is a very recent thing. Our native populations have evolved with healthy soils. Our research plots where we put 1/2 inch of compost 7 years later are dominated by native plants without planting a seed. It clearly works. The plants love it. And to that point, one of the botanists who came there last year, the whole group, we had regular science and regulatory groups come through the landscape, and our whole group moved up the field looking at the different effects. But this botanist was stuck on this plant. And that, we didn't pay attention to her, but then that evening there was this email thing going, I think I discovered a very dangerous type of stipa. And she was all alarmed, and we became very concerned because we were very, very concerned about invasive species. And then she spent all night looking through all her books. She took samples, and it turns out it was a huge sample of the California state grass, purple needlegrass. It was huge. It was bigger than any books recorded. I have a whole hill covering with that plant because of increased soil fertility. So our philosophy is just create optimal conditions for good things to happen, and they will.
I mean,
No.
and I'm happy just to jump in on this because a lot of my work is as a botanist, as a coastal prairie botanist. And if you'd like to look at coastal prairies, we have a beautiful website, the Coastal Prairie website. Just go on for Sonoma State from the Coastal Prairie Working Group. And so, and I'm on the board of a group called the Sonoma Mountain Institute, which is another entity that does a significant amount of grazing and managed grazing. And I can firmly get behind this reality about increasing the perennial diversity of these prairie systems. We like to call them more than just grasslands, because there's the Stipopulchras and the Danthonia californicas, the Elamuses, these native perennial bunch grasses. But then there's all the forbs and the wildflowers, some of which are perennial and some of which are annual. And the California Native Plant Society folks in Sonoma Marin County, there has been a watershed in the consciousness between the idea of, oh, let's do conservation, put it in forever wild, get rid of those cows, fence it, and preserve our wildflower meadows. And then 10 years later, the wildflowers are gone. And you put the cows or the animals, the sheep, the goats, whatever disturbance regime we needed, back on there, and we get the wildflowers back. So the conservation and working landscape economic engine, there's absolutely a collaborative relationship here on behalf of biodiversity and economic resiliency in our communities. It's perennially dominated.
Nobody has mentioned invasive species yet, but that's one of our biggest issues. Oh, in fact, your industry is based around this. My wife reads a lot, and our original challenge was this woolly distaff, which in our region is the worst weed, and it's not from here. I'm not familiar with it. It turns out that plant needs red light to germinate. So if you have very little forage cover and compacted soils, that plant will volunteer and start getting system function. Where you have intact vegetation, that plant doesn't exist. So our earlier efforts fighting this weed kept creating the conditions for the weed to thrive. But understanding the conditions to make the better plants or the more desirable ones thrive, we don't have those weeds anymore without focusing on them. So it's a nice unintended consequence. All right, there we go.
This is so exciting, and I am so amazed that it can transform so fast. And I was so glad to know that you're working with state agencies, and also that you see that people in our education is very key to making this change. I just finished reading The Vegetarian Myth. So this fits in beautifully, and so the author is saying that agriculture is killing us, and we need this. And also, I'm wondering about kind of the bigger picture and how you are looking at that, because she's saying, Leah Peak is saying that we have 6 times more people in the world than we can sustain. So, how do we look at that?
Well, this is important. Do you want to go ahead? So,
I like listening to you talk.
so let's get to, what is it, Malthus, and populations expand beyond the capacity, the carrying capacity. And so that's really the issue. What is the carrying capacity of this system that we're in here? And I don't know the hard numbers, but what I've seen personally through our own work is by approaching the provisioning of material cultural solutions in a way that every single thing actually is a net benefit to the system. It's by thinking that the more there are of this that are actively consuming, but as informed consumers, selective, the more carbon we'll remove from the system, the more robust the systems become. So impact can be negative and positive, and it's our idea, and I keep losing this, but our group is focusing on creating solutions, a suite of solutions that can supply all the material cultural needs for humans: food, fuel, fiber, and flora, which are all based on photosynthetically derived carbohydrates. So that's the approach we're taking. I know we've got challenges, but with 7 billion people all doing every single thing they do in their wonderful, busy lives in a way that restore the system to balance, that could work.
All right, I think I'm getting the hook over here, like the good shepherdess hook, the crook hook that's going to stop
What's
us
the
on this
burning
one.
question out there?
Yeah, so I think with that will leave us with a sense of emergence, which is that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and it looks like we should partner with our four-legged. So thank you, John, and thank you, Brittany Cole.
And also, how about another round of applause for Brock for taking us through. Great. So we got one more panel to go. The speakers will be up and available to answer questions following. I do encourage you to stick around for our next panel. It's going to be a great one. And it's fighting climate change in your neighborhood. And we'll be getting going in about 15 minutes on that one. Again, great stuff happening out on the street. Encourage you to take a look at that. Tons of wonderful organizations who want to engage with you guys and share with you what they're up to. So encourage you to walk around and meet some folks out there as well. Thanks again to our sponsors, Nutiva, Dharma Merchant Services, the Downtown Berkeley Association, Ecology Center, Earth Island Institute, Yelp, and Berkeley Side. Thank you, guys.